Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Braverman,
And I'm Ellen Selm,
and welcome to our podcast, Stories from the Earth.
where we explore mankind's relationship and connection with the natural world.
We would like to take a quick moment to invite our listeners to consider supporting us through a humble little donation. If you go to our Anchor page and click the support button, you can donate from $1, $5, or $10 a month. The donations will go towards helping us with future projects, such as launching our herbal education curriculum, and we've dubbed the People's Herb School, a program designed with affordability and accessibility in mind, as well as funding to help us take the show on the road and do some on-site reviews and interviews at herb farms and schools and other interesting places relevant to our show's theme.
Today, we're going to be talking with farmer and herbalist, founder of Enchantment Creek Apothecary in Wyoming, Heather Jones. Welcome, Heather. Can you tell us a little about yourself and describe how you got interested in pursuing a more formal or professional path with medicinal herbalism?
Yes, definitely. And thank you for having me on, both of you. I'm loving all what you're saying because the people's medicine is herbalism. It's our medicine and it's gorgeous. I am obsessed with it. I've been working with medicine plants for 16 years. It's been something that called to me, I think, when I was a child. Growing up the way I did, we were definitely very connected to the land out in Washington State with my grandparents. There's a lot of home remedies, including hot toddies when I was a little one.
Did you have brandy tea?
Oh yeah,
My
with honey and lemon, and then we started to ask for more, and then I think that's when she took out the brandy. Wasn't quite the same. That's where it started when I was a kid for sure, and then the classic story of the medical system in this country. It's try and don't know what you can and cannot say anymore, but um, the medical system failing me when I was young with absurd amounts of antibiotics for all the things, including the common cold, and my immune system, my gut flora, my flora of many orifices was absolutely shot, and they kept prescribing the same thing over and over and over again. And as a 19-year-old person, I was saying, this is not right. This makes no sense. There has to be another way, because something in my body told me that our bodies were designed by the divine, and the divine has a lot of gorgeous things figured out that us humans are still trying to sift and siphon through. So I dove in head first and have not looked back. And the more and more research I did, the more and more herbs I ingested, the more I grew them, the more I played with them in the forest, and the more I realized that there were more answers in nature than we were not only just giving credit to, but even acknowledging. And it just became my love, and I devoted my life to finding nourishment through the earth for us as humans, for animals, and then for the land too. It's not just, we are not one piece of, well, we're one piece of a giant puzzle that I believe we can shift to having a beautiful impact through plant medicine, through farming, through community building, like what you guys are doing. It's just going to open so many more avenues for people who maybe thought it was inaccessible before. And I really strongly believe in my bones that the answers are with the plants and the answers are with nature.
I think a lot of us come to herbalism through like some sort of chronic illness or some sort of just something to do with the Western medical system, and then we were like, this has to be another way. I don't get it. So yeah.
Definitely.
Oh, we have a doggy. Oh,
yay!
If you're watching on YouTube, you just saw a very cute puppy dog.
And she's probably going to sit here the rest of the show, would be my guess.
Fur babies joining is really important. They feel the good energy.
You and your partner have a farm, I believe titled H&M Farm. When did you start your farm? How long have you been running it as a working farm producing products? And have you always been following a regenerative model?
I love this because there's so many yes and no and yes and no, and it works this way and that way. I don't know where to start because, well, okay. I came to Wyoming because I was gardening in Oregon, and the season never ends. I mean, it never really does a hard stop where we're resting. But I knew I wanted to farm, and I knew I wanted to farm medicinal plants. So I have family in Wyoming, and I'd been visiting and going and coming and going and coming and going for years. And my trips essentially got longer, and I realized there was agriculture here and all of my beloved medicinal plants in the mountains. And so I said to myself, I'm going to Wyoming where I can hike and see more animals than people, and farm and have a break and play in the snow and play in the mountains. And I have been here now for 9 years, and I love it so much. I was farming in Star Valley, which is about, as the crow flies, like 4 hours south, but it's like a 6.5 hour drive south of where we are because we have to go around Yellowstone or through it, which can be really, really intense, especially in the summer season. But so I was farming down there on little organic farms, and it was great. I've ended up working on a farm where I was managing the medicinal herb program and growing vegetables and making medicines and foraging when we could for medicine for this other company. And I loved it. I loved it. And there's a whole bunch of other junk in there. We won't go there today. It's a whole other conversation of that. But long story in the middle there. Short, I met my husband about 4.5 years ago at my cousin's wedding. My cousin, who is living up where we live now, and we met, and he's like, I'm a farmer. And I was like, so am I. And it just kind of happened, and it was great. And I moved up here quickly. It was quick for sure. I'm not going to deny that. It was, yeah, we just knew, and we, again, dove in head first, right? I moved up here, and his family has been farming up here in the Bighorn Basin for over 100 years. And so that's huge. We have 160 head of cows. We do pigs, we do meat birds. I have girls that lay eggs, my chickens, and we have about 100. We just done, I think it's 570-ish acres in production. It is not regenerative. That is the future. When you come up against tradition and a mindset of this is how it's always been and this is how it always will be, this is what we do, there is no way. My husband and I are butting up against that big time, which is fine. It's a part of the shift, right? We have to start somewhere. A lot of my girlfriends down in Star Valley, they were like, oh, Heather, you're moving up where they spray chemicals, and you're moving up to this very conventional, oh God, we're gonna lose you, you know, like, no. We have to start this collective shift somewhere. And I mean, I'm an herbalist. I've been a rebel my whole life, I think, and like the shift of the medical industry is not an easy one either, and we are butting up against that huge right now. My husband, when we met, we both were talking about how we like to farm, and I was telling him what I do with herbs, and growing perennials and having stuff in the ground all the time. And he's like, God, that's where I want to bring my family's farm. But bringing the cows in and having animals grazing and having more pasture and having plants in the ground all the time, right? That's like the basics. The baseline of regenerative agriculture is nourishing the land in the way that Mother Nature nourishes the land. And that is where we are shifting towards. In March this last year, we just purchased our first chunk of the family farm. That gives us more leverage to put our feet. Hi. We put our feet down and say, this is what the direction we want to go is very well known. We jump 10 feet forward and take 9 steps backwards is kind of how we're seeing it shift. But there's a lot of hope. I have 5 greenhouses. I have just under an acre, and I'm working on contracts with two large companies right now to start to put more herbs in the ground. And we're talking like 5 to 10 acres at a time. Hopefully then that 10 acres in 3 years will turn into 20, which will turn into 100, which will turn into the whole farm, right? But we're in the beginning of that process happening. And it is not an easy process to have happen. It's like I said, generational mindset that we are heading up against. However, we see the bright future, and there are books going around the family. Gabe Brown in South Dakota, North Dakota.
Yeah, I was actually just about to be like, oh, have you heard of? Because I feel like that's one of those things where it's somebody who's going to know how to speak the language that would probably resonate with your relatives, right? Because of being similar background, similar sort of biome, and so forth.
Exactly, and that's what's great. And it's me and my husband and my in-laws, so it's not like we're butting up against a whole entire family. Thank goddess for that. Like, oh my goodness, I don't know, that would be a whole nother bag. But Gabe Brown, my friend who lives just down the highway from us, she has gotten her family in full blown, and they have just this year done officially no-till drill seeding their ancient grains. And she might be someone you guys want to talk to also. She's amazing, another farming woman who's in her 30s, making waves. And she and I are both not afraid to make waves. We're like, this is the way our children are going to have topsoil, and this is the way to get the ground to stop blowing away all winter long. We definitely have cleats in the ground. We're gaining traction for sure. And Gabe, like she has been more active getting this moving because I have herb stuff going on, but we are getting the county or the city where we live, the town, to host and have Gabe Brown come. And there's another farmer. And so we're getting them here to speak to the farmers of this area right in the middle, right in a pivotal time where there's lots of retirement happening. There's lots of young farmers coming up, not as many as we want, but hopefully more as we begin to implement this regenerative ag lifestyle, because it's more of a lifestyle. It's not, you're not sucking, your entire profit isn't going to chemical companies, which is the unfortunate reality that we look at right now. Like 40% of our fertilizer that gets spread on the ground that is synthetic goes into the ditch, goes away into the water, and it's not a good model. It's not sustainable financially. It's not sustainable to our ground. It's not sustainable to our future generations, which I think we're beginning to see that very, very well. But again, implementing change is not an easy feat, but we're ready. And my husband and I are both very stubborn, and we remind my father-in-law all the time, remember, we're just as stubborn as you are. So I think that's where my stubborn rebellious streak has really come in handy.
It's just great because it's something that, no matter how much you're having to beat your head against the wall now, it will pay off. It will show it will bear its fruit that people will not be able to deny. So it's like you just have to stay the course however long it takes. And I was actually just I read an interesting article the other day just talking about the shortages going on in the world right now of just all kinds of things, and how it's sort of, you know, it might have been exacerbated by the pandemic and whatnot, but it's really more of sort of a little mirror being held up about the shift in the growth economy, right? Like infinite growth is not possible. And so what might the future look like if we're having to consider, oh, we won't be able to always so readily and easily ship crazy amounts of things all over the world, and why should we have to if we can supply it in our own backyards in a more sustainable way? So you're taking the steps, I think, for sure, towards a much bigger picture right there on your plot of land, but that'll have a ripple effect, you know.
It will. Yes. And that's the big thing too. Like, parts of me hope that we have to. Even though that would be relatively traumatic, but I mean, life on this planet is pretty traumatic. So humans are very resilient, and we can shift through these times of uncertainty. And what if we had to? What if we just had to, like, stop? Then stop and figure it out. It's not the first time we've done it, and you know, there'll be lots of unfortunate occurrences, but I think the last 18 months have been pretty unfortunate, and we are showing that we have ways we can shift through, and we have different ideas that can come through when we are faced with the adversity that we're being faced with. So, I mean, it's not just hope, it's faith that it's going to work out, because it has to. It really has to.
I was listening to a podcast, and they were interviewing someone who wrote a book about degrowth, and this concept of just degrowth is what we need to actually concentrate on, going back the other way.
Yes. I love that. And I've always studied like homesteading, and I ferment, and I save food and grow food in the garden, and we eat it through, like, last year, I think I got us through, my husband and I and my in-laws too. I think I got us through just about April to when we can start putting plants in the ground again. And it's like, cool.
Wow.
How much technology, like, is a gift? Like, look what we're doing right now. This is beautiful. But how much of our old ways are, like, really, really going to sustain us and keep us moving forward as we shift through the systems that are breaking down a little bit right now? You know, and I love that idea of growing forward with, like, old roots, like what you're saying, like bringing the past into the present as a tool, not as like, oh, I'm dwelling on the past, but like bringing what we've done as humans, how hard we've worked, how much we've provided for ourselves. And I think our country especially is realizing how dependent we've been on other countries providing for us. And I mean, there's legitimately shipping containers sitting in the ocean just chilling right now. We don't need to buy all this crap on Amazon. We just don't. We don't need it to survive. We've just become like, we think that that's the only way, and no, it's not.
A humbling thought on that note I had the other day was, like, most people don't even, myself included, know how to, like, legit make a candle from scratch. Like, if we're talking about just getting to the bare bones of, like, that's something that just probably almost everybody used to know how to do out of sheer necessity, and it's relatively simple. And now it's just like, oh my gosh, like,
yeah, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do any of that. I don't know how to can. I don't know how to, you know, like, I don't know how to. I know how to wildcraft herbs, but you know, I don't know how to grow most vegetables. You know, my mom had a garden when I was growing up. She grew corn, she grew all kinds of stuff, but I was too young. I wasn't really like into it as I am now. I mean, we had goats and chickens, and we had 2 goats and some chickens, and we had like a tiny little farm. And my parents are from New York, from Brooklyn, so my mom was just learning all this stuff, and I wish I had been older so I could like help her learn her together. But I did help with, you know, the animals and
Yes.
everything. But yeah, I'm
Well,
like,
that's
gosh,
beautiful. It's in your bones, it's in your DNA, and like the minute you start doing it again, it all, oh, this is not as hard as I thought. And like so many vegetables can grow on a balcony or in a kitchen window. You know, maybe not like, I mean, well, some people have done potatoes. It's just getting a really deep box, you know, but it's yeah, they're lost traditions that will keep us thriving, really. And it's all, we all know how to do it, and especially the women. It is really ingrained in our DNA and our bones. It's there. It just has to get woken up again. And that you grew up that way. Jennifer, that's beautiful because it's really there. You've had it in this lifetime.
I've read like 2 books now about farming for this podcast and stuff like that. And I'm like, I was like, that would be really cool if I could do some farm work or something. I think part of the challenge is that I also work full time.
Right.
And so like, I'm like, well, how do I do that and then do that? And then, but anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot to sort out. And especially, again, our modern society has built itself around having us working in these jobs. That's just,
Yes.
you know, like, are we designed to do that? Are we designed to be creators? And I fully believe we're meant to be creators, just like the universe creates, just like nature creates. Everything is creative, and you know, we work our butts off all the time, and then we have down season. Like right now is kind of chill, but it's like also never chill, right? We're always working, but we're working for our life, our lifestyle, and it's beautiful. I saw like a meme or something a couple weeks ago that really struck, because it's like, oh, been feeling this. We all have a piece of the puzzle, a piece of the community puzzle, right? But the meme said something like, you don't just figure out how to be a shoemaker overnight. We've been so far disconnected from making candles, from making all this stuff as a normal, like, oh, you have your carpenter, and you have your what's the metal smithing guy called back in the day? Yes, the blacksmith. Thank you. You know, we don't have that anymore. We don't have the candle maker down the street or whatever, and but we do know that those things are available. You know, we all need art, we need music, and we need all these beautiful things to like feel alive and feel like something outside of us, right? And I think all of that plays a huge part in a thriving community. So, but we have to make moves to figure it all out, and we're doing it. I feel it happening. I see it happening. You know, doing this for 16 years and watching that shift, and it's been huge. And you know, it's only getting bigger. Yeah,
Gotta start somewhere.
we have to start somewhere. Exactly. Yes.
Heather, what has your, on that note, like botanical and herbal education been? Are you mostly self-taught? Did you attend any amazing programs you'd like to tell the listeners about, or anything like that?
Yeah, at first I was very self-taught, and that was a part of my, like, I didn't want to go to college. I didn't feel drawn to do that, and I always kind of like didn't make a lot of sense to people. So most of it was self-taught in the beginning, like lots of reading. I have hundreds of books, lots of wild harvesting also, because then you're out there and like don't go out and just pick plants. Like it's really important to know exactly what you're looking at, especially where you guys live. Like, oh my goodness, I wouldn't know what I was talking about there, but like that was the path I chose to take. It probably wasn't always the safest, but here I am. And I've always been like, I love to research and read and learn all the things. And so putting that learning and reading and researching into practical experience in the forest, and then later into gardens and later on farms, it's like all of that was the beginning for me, was a foundation of practical experience. And then when I started to realize I wanted to make medicine as a part of our income at the farm, and I started to realize like that is something I really want to do as a part of my practice, then I went and I got certificates. So I was taking like every online thing I could take. Rosemary Gladstar is amazing. And like little, courses courses from schools. I can't think of one of the schools right now out of Boulder, Colorado. I took a few of their like distance learning audio courses. And then my favorite, where I actually went to school, like did do a program, was Vital Ways, the Portland Herb School out of Portland, Oregon. And I was in Wyoming and they let me be online, and I think they do fully online now, but I was their first online student. And Chris Smaka, he is such a brilliant teacher, because you're not learning allopathic herbalism, like take this plant for that condition. You're learning holistic deep dive into the body systems, into lifestyle, into spirituality, deep into anatomy and physiology, and pairing that with the herbs, right? It was amazing, absolutely amazing. And that's how I had been practicing already. So it gave me like a really juicy core to bring into my practice. And he dives into researching and how to research and how to debunk articles and all that good stuff too. So I loved my experience at Vital Ways, and I know that they are, I guess I shouldn't say I know, I'm quite certain they have a full-blown online program now. And Chris is just so great, and all the other teachers they bring in. And it's like I think it was once a month for an entire weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sundays, people who work full-time and all of that. I was working full-time, plus then I was working a job and also being on the farms. And it worked out where I could take a Friday off and then have the weekend and go to school. And the homework was super deep and intense, but it was so awesome. It just like took everything that I was practicing for all these years up to the next level. So highly recommend that school. Yes.
I'll put a link.
Yeah.
I'll put a link in the description and the show notes so everyone can check it out. And I think I'll check it out.
Yes, it's so good. And it's affordable too. It's not like absurdly expensive. A lot of them are, like I looked at going to Bastyr University, which is an amazing program also, but you're spending a chunk. And the reality of herbalism still, like for school, I've heard a lot of people we aren't licensed. There's no licensing for being an herbalist. It's actually a very sketchy line to walk, because you can very easily get in trouble with the feds, honestly. Like practicing medicine without a license for an herbalist is a real thing to consider. And so really understanding federal guidelines, and that they are guidelines, they are very intensely guidelines, and what it means to actually practice as an herbalist in a clinical setting, that's something very much to consider. Like don't go spend 50, 60 grand on something like a course, and take out student loans, like where you're not going to go and get licensed and we're still carving our way through, right? There's lots of beautiful things happening with the American Herbalist Guild and being a registered herbalist. All of the systems they're building to have in place for when we are licensed. But for now, it's still, the feds don't like herbalists. It's very, very much an unfortunate reality, but it's reality. So
this is another little challenge of being an herbalist and working with herbs and everything is. And I used to also the education can be a struggle, which is some of our inspiration with our herbal program.
Yes,
we hope
I
one
love
day
that.
will happen. The podcast sort of got birthed first.
Yeah.
So even though we had the ideas together, but yeah, when I was trying to, and I'm still like trying to continue my herbal studies, but I ran up against like I ran up against money. I'm like, I'm super poor. work at a big box store. I don't have $2,000 to drop on an herbal course, which for some people might not be that much, but, and I know it's just, and then there was no, like, we have a lot of fabulous herbalists in this area, but for some reason I would love to see like a more or any like apprenticeship system where like, you know, you can be an apprentice. I just still would like to have that happen for me, but like somehow can't find one to.
She hasn't found you.
Or they have, maybe they haven't found me. I don't know.
Well, there's a gal I follow on Instagram, but she's in like Vermont, I think. Mary Blue. And she has an apprentice program, and I'm developing an apprentice program for people to come, because the practical experience, like on a farm where a garden is growing full of herbs and you're making medicine and you're drying herbs on a huge scale, like, yes, the best. Education comes from practical experience. I love it so much. So I hope that happens for you, honey. And I'm sure that your program is going to bud and become something really amazing for other people too. Because I go back to, this is our medicine. This is the people's medicine. It's everywhere. If you know like 7 weeds, you're going to be able to feed your family. You're going to be able to have a healthy immune system. You're going to be outside. You're going to be digging in the dirt. You're going to be doing so many magical things. And like, even in the cities, a lot of these plants are so resilient. They just grow all over the place. They grow through the concrete. They grow in every little crevice that has dirt. And that's where like we can really like shift our lifestyle and give nature more credit, right? To uplift her. It's a beautiful thing. I'm glad you're doing it.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I'm excited about your program and everything. I think that would be great.
It'd be good.
I was gifted money to go to school, and I'm very thankful that I actually was able to go get, you know, go to a school. Also on the weekends, it was a weekend, once a month school in Georgia called Botana Logos. So.
Oh, that's great. That's really great.
Yeah. But I'm still, still learning, want to learn more. So definitely always doing that.
Well, and Susan Weed, I love this quote from her. She's always saying like it takes 15 lifetimes to become an herbalist. And I love that, because then it's like, you can just learn forever. And it's fine. You never know everything, and it's always growing and always shifting, and that's just as long as we keep doing it.
I would be okay with that. So, because I don't ever get tired of learning about herbs. But speaking of education,
yes,
you do some teaching.
Yes.
As well, online and maybe some in person. So can you tell us a bit about the kinds of things you like to teach and offer?
Mm-hmm. So I've got a program designed for online, and I'm going to be launching it. Mid-November is my personal due date for launching it, for getting it going. So that's happening. So mostly I've taught in person. I realize teaching in person, I could talk about plants for hours and hours, and especially with an interactive plant-loving audience of students who are interactive and asking questions and all these things. And I love teaching about weeds, because everybody knows the weeds. I love teaching about spiritual connection to herbs. Is really, really what saved my life in that blip that will be a whole nother discussion. The spiritual component of herbs really, really, really saved my life, like in so many ways. And realizing, I don't want to say realizing, because I think I've known about them in that way since I was a kid, but like the spirit of the plant and what it has to teach us is massive. And when we're looking at holistic herbalism, right, we're looking at nourishing the body with a plant, but we're also looking at the spiritual aspect of a human, and the plants have a lot of spiritual components as well. And I love teaching about the spirit side, because it's mysterious, and especially with women who have like their intuition intact, or are just learning or budding, realizing, remembering the intuition, we really can connect to these plants when we alchemize them into like smoke medicine or even body oils, doing all these beautiful meditative things with the plants. And I love opening that up and like soothing anxiety, connecting with the ancestors, getting really in touch with your guides through the plant medicine. I love teaching that kind of stuff. So the course that I am getting together is called The Science and Spirit of Herbalism, because I definitely started out as an herbalist, wanting to like get my PhD in botany and put herbalism on the scientific medicine map, right? I wanted to know all the constituents and I wanted to understand how the chemicals react in the body and all these things. So my roots are in science, but later in my practice, what really saved my life was the spiritual side of plants. So that's, yeah, it's hard to choose, but I love teaching all those things. And I get lost in just talking about an individual plant forever and how it grows in the forest, how it grows in the farm, what it brings to our bodies. And then this whole, new in, a 16-year herbalist career, new few years of what it's going to look like to have a regenerative farm thriving. There's a whole nother component of how the plants come in, and I feel that we'll be able to teach that too one day when we have more, when we're fully established as that model. So it's a long-term goal, but the teaching is all of the things, right? I don't really do like a lot of physiology and anatomy, even though I understand it very well. But I just love just nerding out on the plants.
So I noticed that on your website, it can be seen that you do like some one-on-one sessions of like guidance that you offer folks in what you call your deep dive program. And then other subject matter that I've seen in your writings, like on your blog and so forth, does touch upon land stewardship and the respect that entails, ancestral knowledge, the connections and respect and that entails, and communing with plants to be learning from them directly as teachers. And I think that perspective is much more in line with, the way it seems many indigenous cultures or those with more animistic beliefs approach things. One could even argue a very primal, real knowing in maybe humanity at large. Can you explain a bit for our listeners then how you came to that approach, what it is and how they might begin to follow that themselves? Because I feel like as long as I've followed natural health and herbalism, and probably about as many years as you have been, I've noticed this shift only in very recent years, that there's a lot more talk about that, bringing that element into the fold more, and it not seeming too woo-woo, but there being a legitimate connection happening there. But I feel like a lot of people also sit there scratching their heads like, well, yeah, it sounds beautiful, it sounds poetic. How do you apply that? Like, how did you go for, what was the switch to go from the science is important, yes, but there's this whole other thing now?
Yeah, and that's a deep dive question, and I was like, whew, yes. Because of so many reasons, I think. Where to even start? So how do you even explain it? I think Dr. Joe Dispenza, he is explaining it very beautifully through science and how the brain works on meditation, how the brain is activated on meditation. And from what I've heard him speak about a lot on podcasts, like it's a meditation when you're dedicated, devoted, and you're doing it on a regular basis. And it doesn't have to be like 45 minutes, an hour every day. It can be 15 minutes a day. Your brain goes into a similar chemical reaction as people on psychedelics. We have that access in our bodies. So bringing that to the plants, like, again, when I was a kid, I knew they were special and I knew that we were connected. And it's not, well, sometimes maybe, but it's forced out of us that we aren't allowed to discover, explore, understand the realms that are not, we can't touch, we can't physically break apart and say this right here, this thing, this is what's happening. Like you can a constituent in a plant. You can a nutrient in a plant. You can a fat cell or a protein cell or whatever that may be, like what our skin is, what our hair is. That's all like tangible things that we can touch. And this exploring of the realm beyond the veil, that came to me when I was young, and I had dreams when I was a kid that would happen. I had reoccurring dreams of these like beings that were telling me things about how nature would work. And then when I would tell my grandma, I lived with my grandparents, or my mom, they'd just be like, uh-huh, you're a strange one. Okay. And so it's like, but I always knew something in my body, I guess, told me like, this is correct. Don't let that stop you. And later, I was raised Episcopalian, which is like Catholic light is what my grandma would call it. And there was very much certain expectations of young women, especially, and like being in this little box that we were not allowed to be outside of the box. And I was always outside of that box. There was no putting me in a box. It was just not going to happen. And I stopped going to church with my family like mid-teen years, when that's like, oh, it's so not cool to do that. And I definitely went down the teenager road and left all of these dreams and these premonitions, these spirits that were talking to me, the plants. I left them for a while, as we do in Western society, especially because we don't like, I won't go down that road, but like about when I was finding herbalism, I got a hold of a book called The Spiral Dance by Starhawk. And that blew my mind open when I realized there was a religion that nourished this understanding of plants having a spiritual soul body, of the soil, of the animals having a spiritual soul body. And it's called, she doesn't call it, does she call it paganism? It led me to paganism, and specifically paganism in my heritage, which is Norse, Welsh, Celtic heritage. So that's where this understanding that nature and every aspect of nature is us, and we are nature. Therefore, to me, everything has a soul, everything has a purpose, everything has a transmission of spirit to teach, and therefore should be respected with every piece of respect available to us. And that might just be like where my brain went, but having a space that I call paganism to fall into, that is of my heritage, that at one point, even though it was like burned and tortured out of us, we were indigenous too. And I strongly believe that a lot of this unrest in, with the indigenous Turtle Islanders right now is because we've been grasping at what we know we have. We just have been grasping at what they call theirs. And I think shifting to, like, the three of us, we're European heritage women mostly. Maybe there's little bits of not that in us, but when we go to our heritage, our ancestry, and we go deeper than when the Roman Catholic Church took over the world, it's there. And what I have found even more glorious, a lot of the plants that are here have cousins that are there.
Mm-hmm.
And it again solidifies that connection. Like, in the summer, I grew sacred tobacco this year for the first time. I have not been able to get it to go. And this year I got 2 entire flats. So like 72 plants times 2. All germinated, all sprouted, and I got like 4 tobacco harvests. And this tobacco used to grow wild here in Wyoming. I want to bring back a lot of the plants that have been decimated by farming. And they're great pest control, their medicine of spirit, their medicine of the body, all the things. But when I wanted to read all of the literature that I could on tobacco, right? And as we know it, it's generally classified as only indigenous Turtle Islanders have tobacco, right? As a sacred spirit food. And what I found is there's tobaccos all over the world that are indigenous to different places. And the shamans, the medicine men and women all over the world worked with tobacco in the same way. How does that happen? I'm getting chills. Like, it blows my mind. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
We interviewed Linda and Luke Blackout, and we had a discussion along these lines and about studying and discovering and learning more about your ancestry. Mine is there's a lot of Russian and Romi
nice.
in like just so from both sides, like a lot of Eastern European. But he told me that sweetgrass, which is another plant that's very sacred to the indigenous population, the native peoples, grows over there as well. And I didn't know that. And I was just like, oh, wow. You know, I knew a lot of the herbs here also grow over there as well, but I thought that, like tobacco, sweetgrass was only here.
Right. And I find that to be a very interesting dichotomy and situation we found ourselves in, that the further we separate from nature as a human species, as a race, as a collective, the more and more that's lost and the more divided we are. Because to me, nature brings us absolutely together, because we realize, like, the plant body, how it brings nutrients out of the soil and makes them bioavailable to our bodies, and then our bodies create tissues off of that. Like, how are we not connected? How our breathing, our exhale feeds the trees that then give us oxygen back. Like that, finding that out, that's like, how glorious is that? You have sweetgrass and I don't know much about Russian, heritage, but I know they have smoke medicine.
I don't know either, actually. And per that discussion, I was like, I need to start looking this up.
Yes.
I need I need to.
Yes. So. And that's where I would go back to books for sure, because a lot of things are getting, I mean, especially now, oh my gosh, lost in translation on the internet. Finding old herbal books, like my favorite one that's older from Welsh Celtic heritage is a modern herbal, and it's old, but it has a lot of that folklore. And then when you start diving into the folklore, then it's a thread, right? And you just keep pulling and following it. And then you find more and more, and then you find more authors. And you just keep, so that's kind of how I've done it, is just finding little threads in books and then finding more authors that are talking about those threads and buying those books and buying all the books. Filling your house with books. Money is never wasted on books.
I did a search for like Russian herbal whatever, and I came up with actually, like, there's some Polish books that have been written.
Oh, good.
So it's like, wow, that's in the area there. So
yes. I love it. Oh, I love it. I want to know, because I have friends from Czech Republic, but I have friends where, I'm not gonna be able to remember where his name is. I can't remember, but somewhere in Eastern Europe. And he's a friend here, and I was telling him about my mentor had taught me indigenous Turtle Islander method of fermenting fireweed. And he was like, my grandma's been fermenting fireweed in that way since her grandma taught her. And it's like, okay, yes, we are all doing this because it makes sense. I mean, again, the how do we, I don't understand how we understand. It's really hard to explain the spiritual aspect of things. But when we see these patterns, right, it's just, you can't deny it when there's indigenous cultures from all over the world using the same plants in the same way. And they didn't have the internet then. They weren't communicating via text messages and like we are right now. There was none of that. So how did they all do it the same way? It's fascinating to me. And I really believe it's the plants were like whispering to them, because when we slow way down and access those higher vibrational dimensions that are not in the physical realm, we can hear the plants. And we've been hearing them for a long time.
It's like a collective dreaming, and I think that probably became a lot easier when we just had quieter, simpler lives,
Yes, honey. Yes. That is legit. When we had quieter, simpler lives, like we were not bombarded with radio waves and waves from our cell phones and our screens. Now it's like we didn't have all of that, and it's stress. It's a big stress on the body and the nervous system. I've lived in cities, and my nervous system just goes haywire, and I can't imagine now either. It's just like, oh my goodness gracious. But
I'm really glad my parents did take the big move and move us to, Western North Carolina.
Yes. Huge. Amazing. I love it.
Okay, so well, sort of in that vein of connecting to plants, what was the first herb you felt like you really connected to, and why? What was that first herb that said, hello?
They do. They say that.
Hello, I'm here.
Oh, God. It's so hard. It's so hard.
I gave up sort of asking herbalists what their favorite herb was, because I was like, well, that's pointless. They're all a favorite herb.
I know. When I'm teaching, I'm constantly saying, this is my favorite. This is my favorite. I'm like, I really need to just stop saying that because it's not possible. Well, the herb that brought me here to Wyoming, that's very clear. And it was Osha. Linguisticum filcinium is our species here, and it's massive. It had me really freaked out because it's an Apiaceae, and it's in the same family as like water hemlock, our one deadly poison on this continent. Or that's like the deadly poison, right? But I had to know Osha. She was like calling my name. I could hear her from the Pacific Northwest, and she was like, no, you got to get there. There are species out there in the Pacific Northwest of her, but she was like, it was very much the Rocky Mountain Osha plant that I had to be with. I am obsessed with her, and we're trying to grow her. She's really probably not going to grow here because it's too low. She likes to have elevation. I love to have elevation. That plant has taught me so much about resilience, about strength, about breathing, about meditation, about connecting to breath, understanding how the plants grow together in the forest and how they intertwine and intermingle and hang out together and have certain friends that they like more than the others. And she has taught me so much, being rooted into the ground, but really about breath. And I find that breath is our innate connection to the divine. It's our connection to source, to creator. It's a gorgeous gift of love. And when we fill ourselves up, we're only exhaling more love, more strength to nature and all the humans all around us. And Osha has taught me so much about that beautiful breath. And I remember the first time I smelled that root, I can't explain, like, how do you explain something that glorious and that beautiful and that profound from a plant? It's just, to the, to mainstream society, that's just like silly. But to me, it was life changing. It solidified the reason I was an herbalist. It was solidified the reason I wanted to do all the things I wanted to do and grow all the plants and put my roots in the ground here and farm and do all the things. Like Osha taught me about that constant gift we're giving each other as humans to nature all the time. And that is my plant. She's probably not the first one that talked to me. In fact, she's not the first one that talked to me at all, but she drew me here. It was like a magnet. I couldn't stay away from here after knowing her here. I think the plants have a really special existence in our lives as humans. And it's just that slowing down that breath gives us the opportunity to do is when we're able to like sink into it fully and ground into it fully and say, yes, simple is good. Simple is better. Simple allows a connection to something greater than ourselves that's all around us all the time. And it connects us more, I think, in the meantime. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Well, I was curious because you were saying how even though there's a variety of the species out in Oregon, which is where you were at the time, you were particularly being drawn to the scrubbier mountain variety. And so how did that like pop up? Was it like coming in dreams? Was it just like a lot of synchronicities where it was like you were hearing about it and it was coming up in books and it was all over everywhere you turned? Or like how did that manifest?
It was like the elusive plant that I could never find in Washington and Oregon. And every time I would hike in Wyoming when I was just visiting, I'd be like, oh, there you are. Oh, I'm standing in a field of you. Oh my goodness, you're everywhere. You're everywhere I turn when I would like be visiting. I was just visiting. And then, starting to read, and she got my attention. And then, yes, the dreams are a whole nother that's a whole nother thing, but she was popping up in my dreams, and it was like melting snow in Wyoming, and I would be dreaming about her stirring and coming out of the ground. And then later I found out that she's like the first thing the grizzly bears eat when they come out of hibernation, and I'm dreaming about her when the grizzly bears are coming out of hibernation. It's like, you can't make that stuff up. How does that happen? I don't know. So that's that. Yes.
Can you tell us some ways in which you connect with the natural world and stay grounded, particularly in these crazy times that the world's been experiencing as of late?
Yes, great question. Great question, Ellen. The first thing that comes to my mind, and I've, is turn off your screens, especially the television. I have not had a television in my life in over a decade, and it is glorious. We'll watch a movie here and there, but like connected to the cable and, even the local stuff, it's so destructive and disrupting. And we've talked about a couple of times, like what that simple life was before we had these screens. And they're a beautiful tool. Like what we're doing right now, that is because of man-made technology, and it's a beautiful tool, but interacting with it as such, not, having a healthy relationship with your social media and putting it in its place, having a healthy relationship with your phone, having a healthy relationship with the television. Maybe that's something you really enjoy and you have television shows that you really love, but then like maybe, ignoring the commercials or turning it off at commercial time or what have you, because a lot of this stuff that's being pushed on us right now, it's making us disconnect further from nature and from the natural world. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind, because when we turn all this stuff off, like at our house, we can't get Wi-Fi here, and we're not like super remote, but we're remote. We're definitely out in the country, but we can't get Wi-Fi. And sometimes I'm like, oh, it makes things so much harder. Like I have to go to a coffee shop to upload a lot of stuff onto my website or into the course creation and all of this. So it's a detriment, but it's also like a really beautiful thing. And I turn my phone off at night when we're sleeping. It's on airplane mode, so we don't have the the waves coming in and out of our room and in and out of our dreamland. It messes with that flow. And like we've touched on a few times in this conversation, is that simple life that we used to live as human beings, and like, where can we access it? Can we make more of our food at home? Can we, try growing a plant on the windowsill? Can we put more of our energy into that creation story that we want to see happening in the greater world, right? Like disconnecting from the modernized things, even when we think we need them, we don't need them. They are an excellent tool, and to use them as have that relationship with them, because the more we get back to that simple way of being a human and just being on this planet, then your meditation mind explodes. Your dreamland goes bananas, because it's more of it's at the forefront of your mind. It has more energy, right? It has more of your attention. We can focus on our spiritual connection, on our dreams that are coming through from the plant realm, from the realm beyond the veil, from our ancestors. We can connect with all of that stuff more when we're more disconnected from the things that are distracting, because it's a very distracting world, the screen world. It sucks us all in, and there's a piece of it that's in a way a design that way, but we can have the discipline, the dedication to say, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to shift my relationship with Instagram or Facebook or whatever your social outlet is. That we can shift our relationship. And that's something I had to do, because when in the beginning of this, I'm a researcher. Like, I'm going to look into all the things and understand my perspective, and that spun me out for a while. I was like, my anxiety was coming. I had anxiety coming back. I try not to say my anxiety, because that's very ownership, and the anxiety I experienced as a human kind of throughout my life was coming back, and I was like, what am I doing? I knew exactly what I was doing. I was going way too much with this narrative that's being pushed. No matter what the narrative is, it's still a narrative, and I was spiraling myself out into that, and I had to say, whoa, let's go back to how I know I am balanced, and how I know we all can be balanced. Like, not spending too much time on Instagram, like going on Instagram, posting my stuff, doing my stories, like checking out my teachers, the people who are providing nourishment to my spiritual life, to my herbal life, to all of the things, because there's beautiful teachers out there all over the place for spirituality and herbalism and all of that gorgeous stuff. So going on Instagram for 10 minutes a couple times a day, and like being devoted to that 10 minutes and making it super productive, and then move on and continue creating, continue going back to your research, going back to making some medicine with new plant friends that come through in your dreams, like going back to that human stuff after you've dabbled with the Instagram, after you've dabbled with I read Outlander last winter. I read the book, and I was like, this is an awesome book, and I want to see the show. So I've been watching the show a couple episodes, a couple times a week, and I'm totally obsessed, because I don't know, I love how Claire's like all into the plants. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but I'm totally indulging in some Outlander right now, because it feels nourishing, but I'm not like binging on the couch for 5 days in a row. It's like a couple episodes here and there, and totally loving every second of it. We can have these things. They're a beautiful modern thing, but again, just being diligent and being devoted to your human practices first, instead of devoted to Instagram, instead of devoted to the news, instead of devoted to whatever this outside man-made technology thing is that you feel like you're leaking your energy into. So that's where I would say to start right now. Because then your meditation gets more powerful, your spiritual connection gets more powerful, your dreamland starts igniting like something you've never experienced before, because we're coming back to being a human and all of that. So I hope that helps.
I like the sort of, there's a funny juxtaposition in that, because you're like, I love how you put it, you know, getting back to like being human. It's like, well, social media and all this stuff is a product of humans, but how strange is that it's like can just as much kind of suck us away from those core bits. Yeah, it's so weird how something we would generate would equally have as much potential to just drain us away. It's very weird.
On a slight tangent, because of all like the new Dune movie stuff, which I decided that because my job gives me 8 hours of where I can listen to podcasts and books and everything. So I've got a lot of time on my hands. I decided to listen to Dune. The writing is fantastic. I've never read it.
Nice.
But it's about capitalism and space and all this stuff, and there's a whole bunch of spirituality, and it's just amazing what's in that book and the themes that seem to be happening. But they literally, I think they have people that are not, or part robot or they're augmented or something like that. But anyway, they literally have like this. I don't know if you're familiar with Dune.
I'm not.
Okay. But they have this. I guess it's their. I guess it would be the closest thing to their like goddess religious sect, and they have an initiation. They have a test, and it tests to see if you're human, and the Reverend Mother always addresses the main character a lot of times as young human, like, and that's really that was really interesting. So,
that makes you like spin out in all directions if you wanted to.
I was like, whoa, this book is so good. And the writing's good, and it doesn't you don't get too confused with all this sci-fi mumbo jumbo. He like puts you into this world. Of course, I've seen some of the movies, so that helps. But anyway,
I love it. I like tangents. I go on them often. Just ask my husband.
Relative tangent.
Yeah, they're good.
So what is your definition of health and healing?
This one was hard for me to think about, and I'm glad you gave it to me to think about. Health and healing is an ever-evolving process, if it is anything, which also to me matches nature, because nature is always decaying, dying, growing, decaying, dying, growing, decaying, you know, all the things that are happening all the time. And I really feel like, as we were just talking about with, you know, I was having anxiety attacks again because I shifted away from what I know keeps me balanced and grounded. And I think as human beings on this modern planet, we have that capacity, that it's there. We can, you know, I eat really well majority of the time, and then, I'm feeling a little depressed, and it's kind of going on, and I'm feeling anxious, and I'm going to lose my habits, and then we create new habits, right? So it's, to me, health and healing is an ever-evolving process of being mindful, of being aware, self-aware, right? It's super important to be able to look at ourselves. What are my habits? What am I doing out of just habit? What was working for me and is not all of a sudden working again? I think the self-reflection piece is huge, and it becomes something that we can grow and evolve as human beings while we're on this planet. And what a beautiful thing that is, because something that worked for me when I was, 10 years old is not going to really probably work for me when I'm 30 years old and when I'm 60 years old. It's all understanding what balance is to you, what you think your balance is, your state of like flow where you're doing little like ups and downs, and how that's attainable for each individual person. And from what I've found with working with clients and stuff, spiritual, lifestyle choices, your food choices, how you're bringing plants into your body. Are you eating nourished meats? Are you having, are you going through a hormonal shift and you need to shift everything you've been doing for the past decade? That's what health is to me. It's not just here's a pill, you're done, thanks, bye-bye. It is always evolving and always understanding that we evolve as a human.
What do you feel like is the role for medicinal herbalism in the future? Or what would you at least hope it would be or like to see it become?
What I love, I say this to doctors a lot when I talk to doctors, which I love doing. In traditional Chinese medicine, they have their hospitals designed to where you can go allopathic, you can go totally traditional Chinese medicine, where like the surgeons are straight up cutting you open and they're stuffing you full of herbs and they're sewing you shut. You can go either extreme, or you can meet in the middle and have both. And because I shouldn't say I'm not, because sometimes I am, but I really strive to be a person that's like open to both sides having their place, right? There is a time for allopathic Western medicine. There is a time always for herbs, always herbs all the time. But that we can, as a bigger collective, coming together, meeting in the middle, finding a middle ground, finding a space where we can both thrive, because there is like an appendix rupturing. That's really great to have a surgeon who's going to cut you open and get that toxic, deadly toxin out of your body. Like, yes, please. Thank you for that surgery being available. Honoring that, and then staying well with phytochemicals that are available, because I think most of us know by now, I really hope most of us know by now, pharmaceutical drugs create more problems and create more problems and create more problems when we are looking at lifestyle stuff, right? When it's life-saving, beautiful, great. When it's, oh, you're having this little pain, well, here is this pain drug. Oh, and now you're depressed, and now you're addicted, and now all this cycle of being addicted to the pharmaceutical industry, which is an industry, that's the piece that I want herbalism to like get in there, fit right in there, where we can nourish our lives every single day, and I'm not even good about, I don't take my herbs every day. I'd say I probably take them like 5 days out of the week. And then a couple days I'm like, oh, I forgot today. Oops, it's fine. But like the way I cook, what I cook with, all of those things, that's all herbalism to me. That's that, and meditating every day, multiple times a day when necessary, for an hour and a half on Sunday if that's like appropriate and going to work out. That's where I see herbalism helping people thrive on an everyday basis, like nourishing our obesity problem, nourishing our chemical dependency, nourishing all of these things with plants. They can all do that, especially our medicine plants. Like eating plants is great, but I also eat a lot of meat. I raise beef. I find nourished, happy meat to be essential, especially to women who are in their bleeding years, but that's a whole nother thing. So that's my hope, my faith that I hold.
I agree. I would like to see that too as well, because I have 2 chronic illnesses, and one of them is IBS, and then I remember my gastroenterologist throwing his hands up and going, "How about acupuncture? I don't know what to do."
Yes.
we've tested
Yeah,
you. There's
exactly.
nothing wrong. I don't know. And I'm like, why didn't I think about it before? Because I grew up with acupuncture. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, you know, like sometimes you need surgery, but after the surgery, the piece that's missing is definitely the aftercare, the the healing with the herbs, and also before. So maybe that you maybe not need the surgery, you won't need the drug, or you won't get, diabetes or whatever like that.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely there with you.
It'd be great. It'd be great if the FDA would stop like saying the herbs are not allowed. It would just be really great.
It would be
I know you can't make as much money, but please stop. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Can't help myself sometimes.
Money and health just they don't
Not,
go together. They
not
don't
a
go
good competition.
No. What inspires you most about plants and or the natural world?
It's the resiliency that it holds, I think, is my most inspiring piece, because it shows how much resiliency we can have. And I mean, with our climate right now, with what's happening in the social, economic, every, climate of humanity, we need some resilience. So resilience of nature, watching a forest fire rage and then watching fireweed take over that same forest fire in like a matter of 2 seasons. So inspiring to growth and to the capacity that we have for growth as a species, and how much we can go back to and lean into nature. And I feel that the resiliency that's all around is something we need really a lot right now. And in the coming however long, we need this resiliency for, and that's she's got that mirror up for us, showing us that it's possible. And that's really been holding my heart very beautifully through all of this really crazy times we're going through, the darkness and that's happening, and the scary things and the fear and all the things, and that resilient piece of nature, I think, is going to be huge for us. And it inspires me a lot.
It's a comforting piece, because one glimpse at nature is like you see chaos, you see destruction, you see, just the inspiring awe of everything it can throw at you, or at its own space, right? But then on the other hand, you see, well, those are always usually course corrective, and something else comes up in its place, and it just continues. So I think in times of unrest, and humans feel like they're pulling out their hair, like, what do we do? It's like, definitely for me, it's been big, and especially in the last year or so, to really double down on thinking like, if we don't have all the answers, which we never have and never will, that's a humbling point that can get us to that next thought, which is, but nature just keeps going and going and going and going. So maybe there's something over there, right?
Yes, I love it. I'm glad that's a circulating energy.
We like to ask this of all of our guests, because we're big book nerds, and we've already talked about a lot of books just since you've been talking with us. But on that note, for our listeners, can you name some of your favorite herbal plant books, or for that matter, any books that pertain to the natural world and humans relating to it that have really meant something to you?
Yes. Michael Moore, and not the documentary man, not that one. He's an herbalist. He's passed. But his books that was like the first book that I saw across a bookstore, and it was just like, oh, I was like, oh, medicinal herbalism is a thing. That's my life now. Okay. So Michael Moore, all of his books are amazing. They're really great for like wild plant identification, understanding the plants. He's pretty liberal. Is pretty liberal in what plants he uses, and I appreciate that as well. Linda Kershaw is also another great author with awesome identification books. Right now I'm reading The North Wind, which is about the Norse pagan heritage. And that is like, I'm only just getting into it, but that book is really beautiful in exploring my culture and my indigenous roots that are far beyond, like, they're not graspable really, but we still have pieces of history. So reading about that right now is really lighting me up. And I can send you guys a picture of it because I don't remember the author off the top of my
Oh,
head.
okay. That's exactly what I was going to ask. I was like, so
Yeah, I'll get a picture of it and email it to you.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I'm reading right now because I do tend to like read too much herbs all the time, and I'm like, I should probably read other things too.
The woman you mentioned who did the books that you said are really good for ID,
Mhm.
is that more for herbs out in the Rockies region?
She might just be the Rockies, but Michael Moore has all like the regions of the West. I don't know for you guys, but I just remembered my other like absolute favorite book on the planet. As you're saying this, and I will have to say it real quick because it's amazing, which is Braiding Sweetgrass. Ah, that I cry all the time whenever I
We
read it.
got big fingers crossed that one day we might get to talk to her
Oh,
on our humble little podcast.
I was,
oh my goodness. I will send you all the energy that happens because, oh, Robin Kimmerer, she's so, oh, I want to meet her.
I was at work listening to it. I was just crying, and I work
Oh, it's
in a
so,
warehouse, and I'm just like, good thing I have a mask on, because like, and I'm just like,
yeah.
you can see like the tears, and I'm just like, every time.
I
Yeah,
love it.
it's one of those books where you want to devour it instantly, but you have to keep putting it down because it's just so overwhelming. You have to sit there and just
Yes. Yes, it's so good. It's so good. And you just can go back and read a chapter here and there and just, I love her. So good. Yay, I'm glad. We'll cultivate more of her energy coming to your show. Yes.
What advice would you both give to any budding fellow plant nerds, herbalists, ecologists, permaculturists, and so forth?
Don't stop. Don't stop. Keep going. I cannot tell you how many times people told me I was crazy. They're like, okay, you're one of, okay. Just keep, do not stop, because the momentum that I've seen over the past decade and a half is it's huge, it's astronomical, it's amazing. And I know the more of us that keep continuing on the path, the more that snowball is going to grow and affect and become the one day when we in this country have the freedom to practice medicine in the way we want to. And that is huge. And we can't stop if we're going to see that happening. So just keep on keeping on all the time. Yes, that is all. Even 10 minutes a day, it doesn't matter. Drinking herbal infusions, you're picking dandelions out of the concrete, like all of that matters. And just to keep on doing that. Yes.
So I know you mentioned that you're about to be launching your online herbal curriculum. In addition to that, if you want to share some more details about what people can expect from that, but also any other exciting ventures you have coming up that you want to share, be it products launching, educational opportunities, things you're studying, etc.
Thank you, honey. Thank you for that. Yeah. I'm online. I have enchantmentcreekherbs.com, and then I'm on Instagram. So that's where you can find all my offerings. And thanks for allowing me to share that. I appreciate it. My Science and Spirit of Herbalism is set to be launched mid-November, and I'm very excited about that. And right now is tincture pressing season, so I'm bringing, the apothecary is getting restocked online. And a friend of mine and I here, we are creating a women's gathering surrounding the natural world, surrounding women who are in agriculture, surrounding healing the divine feminine, and therefore rippling out to Healing the Divine Masculine, and we're doing those twice a year, gatherings here in Wyoming. She has a retreat center. So we're doing stuff like that where we're like coming together as women to be in circle, be in ceremony, be connecting with each other. And that's something else we just had our first one and it was amazing. And we cannot wait for that to grow and become something really, really powerful. So that's what we got growing on up here, and keep watching the farm and, interact with me on Instagram. I'm definitely active on there because I love Instagram. Is so gorgeous and a great place to meet other plant people and farmers. And I'm quite active on there. So definitely hit me up on Instagram. I'm at Enchantment Creek.
What is the women's gathering called?
It's called the Goddess Factor. And
And
it's awesome. It was so good.
So you said you're going to try to do it twice a year?
Yeah, once around the Samhain season, around this time of year, and then again around early spring.
Nice.
So Beltane, ish time frames, yeah.
And does it have its own like website and everything, or can you?
We're not that far yet. I
Okay.
will be having like a landing page for it connected to my website. Right now, it's just like it's like an item in my online shop, so you can read like what we did this last time. I've kept it up because it was so good. It was so good. We were just like, oh my gosh, it healed, the healing, all the things. It was just so powerful. So it'll definitely be happening again. And like my email list is the best way to know all the stuff. I'm not like bananas with the emails, like once a week usually is all I do. So, but newsletter, blog stuff, I haven't started. I usually write in the winter time, but getting on my email list and all this stuff will come to you. Yes.
All right, that sounds great.
Yes.
So thank you, Heather, for joining us. It's
Yes,
been
thank
an amazing chat.
Thank
for coming
you.
on.
Of course. It's just, thank you so much for inviting me. This is so beautiful. Thanks for having these conversations and putting them out there and helping our plant cause to thrive.
I'm going to put all of Heather's links down below so you'll be able to follow her on everything.
Thank you.
And you can follow us. You can listen to us on Anchor and Spotify. And you can watch us we have a YouTube channel, we have a Facebook group, and we're also on Instagram. So all those links will be down below. And again, we would like to invite our listeners to consider supporting us, going to our Anchor page and either donating $1, $5, or $10 a month. And we appreciate your support, helping us grow this fabulous podcast.
Yeah. Join us. Our next episode, we'll be speaking with Josh Fox, who's instructor and practitioner of Fox Herbs and Acupuncture here in Asheville, North Carolina. In addition to being a licensed acupuncturist and herbalist, Josh is also a folk singer-songwriter and storyteller who enjoys focusing on themes related to the natural world with those creative talents, which is aptly appropriate for this show, I would say. So that ought to be a fun one.
He does herbal songs about herbs.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Can't wait.
All
right, guys. So we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. I guess as a just random side note, off the book question while we're waiting for her, I'll ask you, in dreaming about plants, this is a loaded question, I'm sure. What's the next step? Because it's only been in the last couple of years that I've started having very specific herb dreams, and sometimes about herbs that I never even once had paid a whit of attention to, didn't know anything about, but here it is, loud and clear, and I'm like, okay, well, now what do I do with you? It's like, I know where you are in my yard. I go out and say hi. I'm like, now
I'm so glad.
What do you want from me?
What do you want from me? I know that's the tricky part, isn't it? And then I think, so you're remembering your dreams.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's been a lifelong, very, very long, detailed dreams.
Perfect. I mean, that's usually what people struggle with the most is like, I see them, but what are they saying? And sometimes sometimes they're just saying, hey, pay attention to me. I'm in your yard and I'm useful. And what I do when a new plant comes in is like, you go and you find them and you sit with them and you meditate, and then like maybe you feel smoky medicine, maybe you feel like ingesting them, if they're safe to ingest, of course. But kind of just you play with them, right? Like they're asking you to come and play. When they're coming into your dreams, they're like, hey sister, we've got time we've spent together in past lives, or what, maybe that's too deep, I don't know. I kind of just say all the things, but like, that's that's like they're asking you to just come and interact. And usually when a new plant comes in for me and I'm like making a new medicine, or making a tea, or I'm burning the plant, or whatever it may be, then more things start coming up when you are quiet and you're just with that plant. That's when like the real magic starts happening, and you start like spirit starts talking, and the spirit of the plant starts talking, and you start remembering things of when you were a witch, like 500 years ago, and you're like, whoa, that is not from this life, and I'm going to go with this. This feels really glorious and enlightening. And so that's kind of just play. They're asking you to play, and the dream space is very playful, and so are they. Like plants are like really giggly and fairy-like, they're like, hee, we're just glad you're here. We're glad you're paying attention to us, and let's have some fun.
That's funny that you say that, fairy-like and giggly, because the dream I had once about Angelica was very much like that. I was like, it was weird because like in the dream, the plant like ran away kind of as if it was skipping and giggling, but that doesn't make sense. But like, oh no, but it does make sense.
To the plant realm, it totally makes sense. I love Angelica. She's so good. So good.